Hello, everyone, and welcome into the Second City Hockey Ice Cold podcast. I'm Robert Zaglinski, joined as always by Adam Hess. Adam, how are we tonight?
I'm pretty good. Trying to watch the Cubs, but I don't have a cable hookup in this room that I'm in, so I was doing an online stream, and then it got ruined when we started this podcast.
Dude,
So
you're stealing?
I'm
You're
going to
legally
have to.
stealing?
I plead the Fifth Amendment. I paid for it totally. But I'm relying on Twitter, which is just never a good thing. But whatever.
Cubs Twitter is toxic, man. Come on.
That's true.
It's the same people that are on Hawks Twitter, but that's a different conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, we're joined tonight rather, by Mike Fail of Flames Nation. He's the good content man, good content boy of Twitter, and in general does fantastic advanced stats stuff for the Flames and the whole hockey world. Mike, how are you tonight?
I'm kind of tired. Kind of really tired. I'm probably gonna go to bed after this. I'm an old man now, but I'm doing all right.
How old man? Well, Adam and I are like 22. So I mean, is that old or?
I'll be 28 next month. So.
Dude,
That's not old.
That's not old.
Well, I feel old, but no, it's been a long week. So yeah, thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for coming on. Let's get right into it, man. What were some? We're only really 3 games in. What were some of the biggest moves the Flames have made in the offseason leading into it? So we can still kind of do this.
Yeah, I think first and foremost the Brian Elliott signing, or so not signing, the trade for Brian Elliott, and then the signing of Chad Johnson. The Troy Brouwer signing, it's kind of worked out so far in 3 games, but I mean, a 3-game sample size is nothing in 20 games, and it's virtually, indistinguishable in 82 games. So I think that's kind of been the biggest side of it. Outside of that, they had some subsequent losses with like Josh Juris going to New York. Jakub Naklitl, who played really great for Team Czech Republic, went and signed with Carolina. So it's kind of like, even though there's been some kind of positive things, there's been a couple of losses that have kind of offset that a bit.
Who do you think the Flames will miss the most this season? I mean, you guys are 0-2-1 right now, so
probably Jakub Naklitl. I'm a big Josh Juris fan, as you know, but I think I'm a bigger fan of Jakub Naklitl than most people. It's a little bit unhealthy at this point, and I'm not going to hide that. He doesn't, have like the biggest NHL sample to really say whether or not he's, going to be this top flight third pairing depth guy. But 27 games he played last season for the Flames were pretty great, given how most, I'd say at least over half of the Flames blue line was below replacement level. And that's if you include, Ladislav Smith, who's on the injured reserve here for this season. But he seemingly found a way to make the third pairing look great, which is hard when you have Derek England there. And even Jyrki Jokipaka, who came over in the Chris Russell deal, he wasn't that great to start. So Naklitl ended up carrying him. And I think 3 games in this season, with the inconsistencies on the blue line, and so far we've seen a rotating cast of guys being moved in and out, I think that probably would have been a little bit helpful so far.
do you think the early start is more just growing pains and guys not like set to the system? Because Adam and I at least thought that the Flames would be a playoff contender, and I'm not really like gasping at this early bad start.
Right, and I'm in the same boat. I mean, it's 3 games, and Flames fans are acting like the sky is falling. It's like Chicken Little right now. Everybody's so caught up with this confirmation bias. Bob Hartley wasn't the problem. It's clearly Glenn Gultson isn't a capable NHL coach 3 games into the season. They're hit with this recency bias of, it's 3 games into the season. The Edmonton Oilers are 2-0 right now, even though they're kind of struggling right now as we record this against Buffalo. And you can go down the gauntlet of different biases and things in place. So I think the one thing to keep in mind is in these 3 games, we've seen bits and pieces of Glenn Gullickson's new system and tactics being employed. And for the most part, outside of the third period last night against the Canucks, they kind of controlled play for, I think it was about 58% at 5 versus 5 in terms of shot differential. And that's kind of unheard of for the Flames, especially in the Bob Hartley era. So I think as soon as those growing pains kind of dissipate, Paul Gerard's penalty kill system really takes hold, and it's been pretty great. And whether or not Dave Cameron can actually run a successful NHL power play, I think we'll kind of see it in about 20 to 30 games here.
Mike, you mentioned that like the signing and trading to get Brian Elliott and Chad Johnson really addressing the goaltending was important for the Flames because, and I was thinking about like how they got Brian Elliott, and I was trying to think like who started in goal for the Flames last year, and then like I couldn't even think of a name, which that might sound like maybe I'm just a bad hockey fan, but I just couldn't think off the top of my head who played goalie the majority of the time for the Flames last year. So how much is having a goalie like Brian Elliott, who has playoff experience and a history of success, and then adding a very good, capable backup like Chad Johnson going to have an impact on the Flames this year?
Well, I don't think you're a bad hockey fan, Rob. I mean, if you look at the cast of people that they had in net last year, they had Jonas Hiller, who by all accounts going into last season looked to be at least slightly above league average, and then Kari Ramo, who seemed to be this fringe average, if not below average NHL starter. And then they had this, I guess, young guy, even though he was like 25 or 26, in Yoni Ordio, that everybody seemed enamored with and thought that he was the next Mika Kiprasov. And between the three of them, they got some of the worst goaltending probably in Flames history. Probably some of the worst goaltending since like the Young Guns era, the late 90s and early 2000s. And so they go out, they address that problem. They get Brian Elliott for a second-round pick, which is pennies on the dollar, basically, because everybody knows a second-round pick at the draft. And around that kind of time frame of year, you can pretty much get anything for that cost, especially if you need it. Chad Johnson seemingly appears to be a slightly above league average backup. He's not gonna win 60 games for you, or he's not gonna start close to 40 games, but he's likely gonna play a comfortable 25, 35 games, and he's gonna, if he plays like he did last night against Vancouver, I don't think there's gonna be any problems. I think that, again, the recency bias of Brian Elliott having 2 bad games in a row against Connor McDavid effectively has kind of soured people and set the wrong expectations up. But if any Flames fans are listening right now, actually, just before I say this, can I swear?
Yes.
Okay, calm the fuck down. Seriously. This is like the worst I've seen you guys in probably 5 or 6 years. You're acting like children. Quit calling for Bob Hartley to come back. Quit being fucking babies. Just chill out. It's 3 games. You're not going to be talking about this in March. Just calm down.
That's kind of after the Hawks lost game, the second game, and they lost to the Predators. I saw some people, not necessarily on the like a freak out level, but people were just like, "Oh boy, could be a long season." And I was like, "So the Hawks lose to like the team who eliminated them last year and the best team in the division between St. Louis and Nashville, and everyone's like, "Oh no, going to be a long season." Like it's 2 games. As Mike said, everybody calm the fuck down.
Yeah, I mean, even the Blackhawks, like their goal differential right now in all situations is what, -2. Like it's not worse. Like you're playing, like you said, they played Nashville. Nashville is built to be a Stanley Cup contender. They're, oddly enough, they are my Western Conference pick. And if you walk out with like at least some semblance of decent play, like that's still a good sign.
Yeah, I think that is like this early in the year, like even starting hot is only worth so much because we've seen teams in the past that have started hot and then fallen off the wagon and end up missing the playoffs completely.
The Habs were going to win the Cup last year, going 9-0 early. So
yeah, that's actually a perfect example. And then they ended up, they lost Carey Price and then went to shit.
And then they lost Subban later, self-inflicted.
Exactly. Like so many like as soon as like your biggest players basically that drive play and measurably account for generating wins drop out, like Carey Price, PK Subban, like you're screwed. Like, and that's going to be a problem for every team, and you don't want to start writing off teams and seasons and everything like that in October. If you want to be that way, do it in December when, typically by at that point we've seen enough of a sample size of any team to kind of get an idea of what they can be.
Yeah, I feel like you need to get 25 to 35 games into a season to really get any kind of idea of the trends that a team is going to be heading into. And then even then you need to look at, what kind of injuries have they had, where, which players are underperforming, which players are overperforming, like how can you expect things to regress back to where it normally is going to be? Because obviously, history, it kind of tells us what to expect. That's why we study analytics and statistics to begin with, is, to figure out what we can expect and predict. So 3 games of, for any team is obviously not enough to make a decision on who's going to be getting Nolan Patrick next summer.
Exactly. I mean, if somebody was like, yeah, I have Los Angeles to be the top team in my model in the Western Conference, and most people do, and they start the season 0-2, like, you're not going to, like, a sane person isn't going to go up to, like, Dom or Micah on Twitter and be like, hey, your model sucks. Like, if you're a crazy person who's an egg for an avatar, of course you're going to be like, your fucking model sucks. Oh, you don't know anything about hockey. I don't get the fanaticism involved with sports fandom. Like, I do refer to myself as like a self-hating sports fan, and I don't like other sports fans, and I don't like the world that I'm in. But at the same time, like, it's the only escape that I have. So.
Yeah, I think that that's a big part of that for me has actually come from kind of like being in the like writing, like statistics evaluating world where you like it's much more like cold, calculated fandom and like being realistic about things as opposed to just like being a fan to be a fan and like, oh, you gotta have faith and heart and believe. Like, no, if it looks like they're going to be a shitty team, I'm going to be realistic about it and say they're going to be a shitty team.
Yeah.
I think hockey dipshit. That's his handle. I don't remember exactly. I think it's Stefan Heck. Yeah, Stefan. His new kind of brand with the Canucks of like he hates them so much, even though he's a Canucks fan. Like, to me, that's kind of like almost the more fun part of being a fan. I'm kind of experiencing now with the Chicago Bears, where I watch the Chicago Bears and like almost actively root for them to lose because that's like what needs to happen for them to get better in the future.
Exactly. Like, there's like this weird masochistic kind of, I don't know. I got into a conversation with somebody the other day in a private discussion, and we were talking about postmodernism in hockey writing, and then postmodernism in sports fandom. And I never had really thought about it until it got brought up that we're kind of hitting this critical point where there's a certain level of irony, like almost too much in what we're going for as a sports fan, or like what we're analyzing, and there's too much cynicism as well. And I thought it was hilarious because, like you're saying, like Stefan Heck is the prime example of a guy who he's taking the irony to like the next level, where he still has season tickets, and I'm fairly certain his parents do, and he goes to like every home game that he can, and he actively roots for that team. Like, he'll make signs. I don't know if you saw a shirt the other night where it was like Fire Willie and Jim and Trevor and I can't remember the other name there, but
he wouldn't necessarily be wrong if we're being honest though with the Canucks.
Oh, totally. I mean, the Canucks, like, everybody has them as the bottom feeding team in the Western Conference. They beat the Flames last night, thus proving that every model is incorrect. They're going to be a playoff team. It's going to be crazy like that.
Well, this got really depressing, guys.
Yeah.
Well,
it got really real. It got really real. Let's move back. No, it's totally fine. I agree.
Let's transition back to like fun hockey stuff. So, Mike, one of the big Flames talking points up until just about a week before the season started was the Johnny Gaudreau holdout, and the fact that he didn't have a new contract, was still a restricted free agent. I don't think there was much offer sheet or trade talk, but it was just a matter of him needing a contract and it not having been done yet. Now that that's over and they pretty much have a long-term deal, I think it was 6 years. If I'm correct in that, is that right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I covered this team. I don't even know.
Yeah, I think it was 6 years and just shy of $7 million per year. Do you think that he is like the future or centerpiece or like the future centerpiece of this Flames franchise?
Yeah, he moves. He's the mover and shaker of this team, whether you want to believe it or not. Whether or not you want to die on this home road narrative split that a lot of fans seem to be caught up on about point totals. But the Flames' offense moves with him. He's had a considerable volume of point share last season, the season before that. He drives play. He makes Sean Monahan a capable NHL center most nights. Last night, the exception being he looked like a cup of hot piss. But there's this weird sticking point now because of the delay on getting him a contract. Because, I mean, it wasn't really a holdout. Like, he just didn't have a contract, so he didn't show up. That, you know, he's greedy or he's going to bolt back east to Philadelphia or New Jersey when he's a UFA, or that he's just out for getting money, which is fair because he's 23 and he should get paid. But there's a lot of weird contempt in the fan base right now that he hasn't scored enough in 3 games. Confirmation bias, recency bias is showing up again here. And everybody's thinking that, like, this signing of him at $6.75 million was the worst idea ever, and he deserves considerably less. But he's going to score probably at a point per game pace this season. He's going to make Sean Monahan put up a bunch of point totals. Whoever plays shotgun on the right wing, if it's Chris Versteeg, which I at this point it's probably going to be, Versteeg's probably going to benefit from it, and he's probably going to, in turn, make those two a little bit better. He's going to be in the top power play unit for the foreseeable future of the next, 6 years. He's going to do everything, and that's the one thing that this organization needs right now. Is as much as they've tried through branding and pushes here and there to kind of make Mark Giordano and Sean Monahan stand out, it's impossible for them to stand out at that level that Gaudreau does because of how charismatic he can be on the ice and like what he can do. Like, he creates things out of nothing. He just does everything, and he's worth the price of admission. Like, if you get the chance to go see a Flames game and he's playing in it, just like sit and marvel at how he can move up the ice with the puck or see what he can do, because it's incredibly fascinating.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways watching him play, not necessarily on the same level as these players, but he's kind of like the McDavid, Patrick Kane, Sidney Crosby kind of player where like he's so electric that like you have to be watching him. And like you said, he's worth the price of admission alone because he's so good and so much fun to watch that, and makes other people around him so good that like that is like what you're watching when it's on when he's on the ice.
Yeah, he makes hockey fun. And it seems like really weird and stupid for me to say that, but hockey isn't fun sometimes, especially if you have a really bad team or you have a team that's underperforming or a team that's kind of caught in a drought. And he comes out there, and if the puck is on his stick, like you're on the edge of your seat. And it sounds really cliche, but it happens when I'm at home. Like, if I'm watching the game on the couch, like I get excited after 2 full seasons of this. Like, I move up closer to the TV waiting for something to happen. If I'm at a game in Calgary, or if I catch the Flames here in Edmonton, like I'm on the edge of my seat all night because he's playing. And like you're saying, like he's got that McDavid level of like star power, especially in Calgary. He's not on the same level of McDavid, obviously, because they're 2 completely different players. And obviously McDavid is the second coming of Crosby in a lot of ways, but he's still going to put butts in seats. He's still going to, be the number 1 jersey in the crowd. He's going to do all of that. And I think that the sooner the better when it comes to fans to just like let go of all these, bogus narratives and things like that have come up over the off season. I think it'll be healthier for everybody in the long run. Yeah.
And I think I like the Flames a lot as like a neutral observer. And I think like with some of the like pieces they have in tow that are going to develop into good players, along with Gaudreau, like Sam Bennett and now Matthew Tkachuk, guys like that, like those are players that are all going to amplify each other, and it's going to be very good for the Flames in the future.
Yeah, I'll put it on record that I think Sam Bennett is the guy who's playing center for Johnny Gaudreau by end of season. I don't think Sean Monahan is that guy long term, whether people want to believe it or not. I think Sam Bennett is that guy. And Sam Bennett likely has a higher upside from what we've seen versus Sean Monahan. And it's going to be painful for a lot of people to believe that, but you just have to trust me that it's probably going to be that way. And it's probably a good thing long-term for the team that you have a guy like Sam Bennett who could likely be that guy for Johnny Gaudreau. He just needs a shot at it, and I'm optimistic that it happens probably as soon as possible. In like the next 5 or 6 games, we might see a little snippet of that.
Do you think the Flames need another young centerpiece like Gaudreau to be a cup contender? Or like how far away are they in that respect?
They're probably if we factor in, every both divisions in the Western Conference, they're not close enough to be. I think they're barely a bubble team right now. The season coming into it, I thought they were a fringe, eighth overall in the Western Conference if they got lucky and if a couple teams dropped out. But realistically, they're probably 9 or 10. What they honestly need is they just need better depth on the wing. And it could come either by a trade or by drafting somebody or anything like that. There's been an idea that we've been floating on the podcast that I'm a part of, the Trevor Kidd Goaltending School, that Tyler Toffoli might be that guy with kind of how the Los Angeles Kings are structured with their salary problems and the no movement clauses and the upcoming expansion draft, that he's a guy that might be worth pursuing. There's going to be enough cap space long term to get somebody like him signed, hypothetically, if that was the guy to pursue. And I think he complements the existing core pieces of the roster. We know he's a top 6 guy already in Los Angeles, and he puts up goals and points, and he drives play. And so you could put him on a line with Johnny Gaudreau and Sam Bennett, hypothetically, or Johnny Gaudreau and Sean Monahan, or Sam Bennett and Matthew Tkachuk, whatever variation you want, and he likely could be, scoring 30 goals a season with those guys. So I think that's an option. But if you look down the roster, the depth problem on this organization is really bad. There's a lot of bad money outside of the shutdown line of of basically Michael Frolik and Michael Backlund at this point. The fourth line is Lance Boma at a $2.2 million cap hit. Alex Chainsaw, whatever he wants to call himself these days. Freddie Hamilton and Matt Stajan and whoever else is a fringe NHLer/AHLer that's on the roster at any given point. So once you alleviate those problems, primarily the top flight right winger that they really need to get to be a really serious team, then they might be a scary threat, because they've got the guys on the blue line in the system in place already, like Oliver Shillington and Rasmus Anderson and Brett Kulak, who played last night. He looks like he could be an NHL player. And then you keep going down the roster there. They have lots of guys at center that are up and coming. Obviously, the goaltending situation long term is really good. So yeah, there's just the main deficiencies at that point.
Yeah, and I've enjoyed their blue line. I've always thought, especially in the past couple of years, that they've had one of the deeper, more talented defensive cores in the league. That's really the main strength, other than Gaudreau. But off of confirmation bias, Toffoli would be the guy. He has 2 cups, so he brings that championship experience to Calgary too.
Yeah, he certainly knows how to win.
He knows how to win.
He's got weird looking eyes, but I can get over that.
He's also a key founder of that 70s line.
Oh,
Stop it.
2016. We gotta keep beating that meme, right?
Yes, absolutely. Mike, so last year, one of the biggest moves that was made in the offseason was the Flames trading for Dougie Hamilton, which was obviously a huge move for them, and a huge shocker on the part of the Boston Bruins. And then Hamilton, not to say that he had a disappointing season, because he still put up, I think it was 43 or 45 points, but it was just a little more under the radar, I think, than people expected. And part of that may have been the fact that the Flames were not as good last year. But do you think that he is going to kind of take the step this year to become their number one rather than Mark Giordano?
I think he has what it takes to be that guy. He was doing it in Boston, and when he was playing with Chara, people seem to forget that he was still putting up pretty good point totals in Boston in his 2.5 seasons there, basically. Last season to start, he was in the doghouse. He had to adjust to playing the Bob Hartley system, which limits what Dougie Hamilton does best, which is move the puck and put up points and drive play. And when you do that, of course, you're a young defenseman who is coming over and like his first big trade, and he's 22 at the time. He's going to struggle. So what the best option would have been is just to keep playing him. But Bob Hartley didn't do that. He put him in the third pairing. He cut his minutes. He really diminished the value that you could really get out of him. And it took a while for him to get going. And obviously, like you're saying, finished the season with 43 points. And not a lot of people were paying attention to it because of the rough start and a lot of the narrative coming from, local media. This season, in the 3 games, he's, especially under what I've seen from Glenn Gullickson's system briefly, like, he's doing what Dougie does best, which is, those 3 big things: move the puck, shoot the puck, and try to put up points and, really drive play. The best option would be to try and fit him into the first pairing. It's a weird logjam, right? Because you have Mark Giordano and TJ Brody and Dougie. And you can basically interchange all 3 of them in that top pairing. And the real problem right now is finding a way to make the second pairing great. Everybody wants to keep Mark Giordano and TJ Brody together because of how effective they are, but at some point we might actually have to see them split up for the foreseeable future to try and maximize whatever we can out of generating offense or even strength play. Like, he's getting top power play minutes, which is great, but there's still a concern with Derek England getting more even strength minutes at this point, and that's going to be alarming for a lot of people to hear because Derek England is barely an NHL player at this point. But I think last night, if I'm not mistaken, he got about a minute more 5 versus 5 time than Dougie did. And this is not acceptable by any means. So there's got to be a balance, right? And I think it starts with trying to get him in, probably, I don't want to say like Dougie Hamilton's a defensive liability. He's not, his defensive impact on ice is not as strong as a Mark Giordano or TJ Brody, for example. That doesn't mean that you can't put him in top pairing minutes, providing his partner is TJ Brody or Mark Giordano, and it might actually help this team. So I would try it out. I think it's the best option at this point.
He is being used as the point on the power play, right? I'm shooting in the dark.
Yeah, so the Flames are using 2 power play units of 3 forwards, 2 defensemen. They were I think they were the only team last season to refuse a 4 forward, 1 defenseman tandem. So he's playing with Mark Giordano on the top power play unit, and it looks really good because both of them can shoot and move the puck so well that it really complements the forward group of Johnny Gaudreau, Sean Monahan, and Troy Brouwer. I think that should stand. He should play the full 2 minutes if possible. I mean, the second pairing would have been TJ Brody and Dennis Wideman. And I think we all have seen Dennis Wideman's skating depreciate to the point where he's barely immobile. But he can still shoot the puck and move the puck, pretty decently. So I think they're trying to maximize as much value as possible out of him. So if he continues to get top power play minutes and hopefully gets top pairing minutes for a bit, I think the point totals will come. And I think more people will stop complaining about him.
So, as we mentioned, a lot of people have picked or are picking the Flames to be a solid contender, possibly a playoff team in the Pacific Division. When it's all said and done, are the Flames in the playoffs, and where do they finish in the Pacific, Mike, in your mind?
Well, I think 1 and 2 belong to some variation of San Jose, Los Angeles, or Los Angeles, San Jose. The third spot is up in the air. I think, especially with Randy Carlyle showing so far with Anaheim and what we've seen of his abilities in Toronto, it's going to impact the Ducks quite a bit. So I don't know if the Ducks are going to be a playoff team. Hampus Lindholm's still out, and they're struggling. So if the Ducks make it in, I think the Flames might be a wild card team if, a bunch of Central Division teams really drop off and Edmonton doesn't make a big push and neither does Arizona. So, like I said earlier, I think there may be a bubble team. There may be an 8 seed team if we're lucky, with other factors involved, but I'd likely see them 9th or 10th.
Okay.
Mike, who do you you mentioned earlier that you have the Predators winning the Western Conference. Who do you have winning the Eastern Conference?
I'm jumping on that safe bet of Washington, as much as it pains for me to say that, and I'm on the Penguins bandwagon. I've been on the bandwagon since the playoff run earlier this year. I think it's Washington, Nashville. I think that's going to happen finally. I think we're going to finally see Alex Ovechkin in a Stanley Cup final, and I think we're going to see PK Subban with the Predators. I don't know who's going to win in this hypothetical scenario, but I think
that was my next question. Was who do you have winning the Stanley Cup then?
Fuck. I love Alexander Ovechkin as much as everybody else does. I think he's the best pure goal scorer to ever come into this league. But at the same time, there's nothing more fitting and more like enjoyable than seeing the Predators win the Stanley Cup and like PK Subban getting the Conn Smythe. Like that in its own would be the best thing to happen to the league, and I think it would make Habs fans lose their shit. And I can get on board with that. So
that's a good concept.
That would be good for like, I guess the league as a whole, but it'd be very upsetting for me as a Blackhawks fan.
Also me.
Yeah, I don't think the Blackhawks are a playoff team at this point. If we really wanted to dig into that, but
yeah, I don't know. I had them finishing third in the Central this year, mostly just because I don't think that other teams in the Central got that much better this offseason. But
except for Nashville.
Yeah, except for Nashville, obviously. But yeah, I don't know. That's kind of a all right. I want to dig into that though. Why do you think that the Blackhawks are not a playoff team? Because I'm starting to kind of get towards this trend. Maybe and again, it is kind of early, but the more I think about it, the more I kind of lean towards maybe like that it is a possibility for them this season.
I think their lineup is so diminished depth-wise, and they've been picked apart slowly over the last few years that they're relying on, the big four up front, I guess you could say, like Taves, Kane, Panarin, and Hossa. Like, I guess that's what you would want to call your...
More or less, you can't even really call Hossa a part of the big four anymore, but yeah.
Yeah, like, they're still going to rely on him, and it's unfortunate, like, Marian Hossa is, like, one of the greatest players to ever play this game, in my opinion, and one of the best two-way players of our generation, but outside of that, like, you look down the lineup, and, like, Artem Misamov, like, he's, an acceptable second, third-line center guy in most teams, and then you go down there, and it's like Marcus Kruger is at a $3 million cap hit, and he doesn't really move the needle that much. Like, sure, he gets all the toughies, like, in terms of starts, but you're not going to win. You're not going to rely on him a lot of the time on the season, and you go down the roster, it's like Dick Panic and Jordan Tutu's on this team, and the blue line, like Brent Seabrook is, a complete specter of where he used to be. Duncan Keith is 33, so the age curve is probably going to hit him soon. It could be this year, it could be next year, but he might stave it off. Dramelson, is starting to feel the effects of age, but there's going to become a point where, like, it hits him. Brian Campbell's a great signing at $1.5 million, but he's 37, and there's expected to be some drop-off with him. Gustav Forsling, like, I like him. I think that he's going to be a great defenseman, hopefully, but I don't think that he's going to be enough to help balance out the defense, and then you keep going down there, and it's like Trevor Van Riemsdyk, Michael Kempney, Michael Roosevelt. If Corey Crawford gets hurt, like, this team's going to be kind of panicking. I think Crawford's still, a fantastic goalie, though. But I think that the big thing is that the Central Division, even though it only incrementally improved by way of Nashville, Dallas did stock up quite a bit in terms of their team. A 1-1 start for them is, probably not what some people expected, and especially in terms of their goal differential, just being +1. But they loaded up. Their team is only going to get better. I think St. Louis is still in a really good spot, even if they lost Brian Elliott and, they lost a few other pieces here and there. Minnesota should improve by way of Bruce Boudreau. You never know. Maybe Winnipeg makes a push again. Like, they have a really good young team there. And their blue line, if they can get Jacob Trouba re-signed, and if he wants to actually play there, they instantly become a bit more daunting. They recently got rid of Andrei Pavlik, which means they're likely aware of, pursuing something better in net if they're finally going to go with Connor Hellebuck, or if they're just going to ride a tandem of him and Michael Hutchinson. Like, you never know what could happen there. And then there's Colorado, who, like, a lot of people expect to fall out, but I don't know. Maybe it's because they hired, Eric Parnas, and maybe it's because they've started making a few more smarter decisions, but like, I think it's incredibly ignorant to just completely write them off just because of what we've seen historically. I'm more open to seeing weird things happen in the Central Division than I am in any other division in the league, just because it seems like the one spot that could be like just a complete like fucking tire fire, or some of the most entertaining hockey we've seen.
I think that's like, I get like all those things you just said are things I've started to consider more and more in terms of like the Blackhawks' chances this year, because I definitely don't think they're a cup contender. Like, they are far away from being a Stanley Cup contender this year in my eyes, but I still viewed them as a playoff team. But then as I've thought more about it, like, in my estimation, and then we had James Naveau on last week, and we both were kind of talking about how we thought the Blues kind of fell off the wagon. And then I watched them against the Hawks, and again, it is only one game, but just like they controlled the puck the whole game, it felt like. And like it felt like the Blues had the puck the whole time, and the Blackhawks were just chasing tails the whole time. And and then Friday night when they played the Predators, it was like the same thing. And all of a sudden, it's that the Blackhawks are not going to be that possession juggernaut anymore, and they're going to be chasing play a lot more. And when you have a lot of young players like they do, they have 6 rookies, and no matter how talented those young players are, it's going to end up being a difficult time if you are chasing the play with players who are, inexperienced, because experience is only so valuable, but it is valuable like regardless. And players are not going to get that much better if they don't have time with the puck.
Right. And Sean Tierney, our good friend who does stuff at like Hockey Wraps and Today's Slapshot, like he did a piece for The Athletic, and he was detailing that. And you can see the trend, like they're trending downward, and they had some shooting problems last season. They weren't exactly the strongest PDO team. They were getting the goaltending, but they certainly weren't getting the shooting luck that they were normally inclined to, even though, Patrick Kane and Panarin had pretty great seasons. But the other side of it is, even if they have great seasons up front, like those, the guys that you expect to, the blue line still has to be a very valuable piece in driving play. And there's there's obviously interplay between offensive and defensive play, but it's considerably less than we had, imagined, especially with recent analysis. And, the passing project has shed a lot of light on that. But if you have a lot of guys who just can't get, passes to connect to drive shots, it's going to be a noticeable problem. And in some of the visualizations Sean did, you can start to see that, like, Duncan Keith obviously in the all-around category, but like Brent Seabrook doesn't really distribute the puck a lot from what they've tracked. And if you look last season, Rob Scuderi and Dromelson and TBR, they were kind of on the side of things where they weren't really shooting or driving, passing much to drive play there. So it's kind of concerning. I think a lot of Blackhawks fans are going to be like, oh, it's fine. We have enough talent that it'll carry us in. And that might be the case, but you don't want to just get carried into the playoffs to get slaughtered in the first round, or if you get through the first round on an easy matchup, you don't want to go and get slaughtered in the second round, right? The intention should be to compete for a Stanley Cup every year, but it's hard to do that if you're bleeding parts that have got you there, age is coming into factor, and then you have no money to spend on pieces that it could help augment that diminishing return that keeps coming year after year.
Yeah, I think a lot of the hope. Sorry, Rob. A lot of the hope on Blackhawks fans is that the team will gel with those rookies as the season goes on. But if that doesn't happen, they're pretty much set to be doomed, in my opinion. Rob, what were you going to say?
I was going to say that this year feels more like a growing sort of growing pains year, as opposed to when last year should have been that, and they shouldn't have went all in at the deadline and gave up these resources, like Mike said, that they really. So now really, if they don't have any depth otherwise, and we're experiencing what should have been last season. We're experiencing guys that may or may not be NHL players, and that's how it's going to translate. And just not a lot of foresight there. I think the deadline sort of the plan there was misguided. and I look at it as one of the final nails in the coffin that whenever this run ends, if we're going to go on that track.
Okay, well, let's transition out of this depressing Blackhawks talk and get into a new segment. This is the first time we're ever doing this, so Mike, you get to be our first.
Bear with us.
You get to be our guinea pig with this. We're calling this more or less. So basically, how we're going to do this is we're going to take two statistical predictions, and we're going to say which will be more and which will be less. So the first one we'll do. So for example, I'll say like this. So we're going to say Patrick Kane or Johnny Gaudreau. Who scores more goals? So guys, more or less, Patrick Kane or Johnny Gaudreau?
Goals.
Kane
will score more goals than Johnny Gaudreau.
I will agree with that.
I also agree with that. Now let's go to points. Kane or Gaudreau?
Probably also Kane. And the Gaudreau's, yeah.
Mike?
Yeah, I think Kane again, just probably barely.
Yeah. I don't think Patrick Kane's going to be a 100-point player again this year. I think again, if you expect that as a Hawks fan, you're doomed for disappointment. But he's still going to be a good player.
Yeah, we should have. Oh, sorry. They're both going to be 80-point players. I should add a little more into that, but I just think Kane scrapes by a little bit, I guess, by it.
Sure. Okay. So this one's probably relatively easy. But Sean Monahan or Johnny Gaudreau points?
Oh, Johnny more easily.
Sean Monahan, right? No? Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, I just couldn't think of like a player on the Flames who I really thought would be close to Gaudreau. I feel like Monahan's probably their number 2 points guy this year. Would you agree with that, Mike?
Yeah, Johnny's going to be number 1. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, now this one is my favorite one maybe. Troy Brouwer points or Troy Brouwer penalty minutes?
Ooh.
Penalty minutes.
Definitely penalty minutes, let's be honest. Come on.
I'm going to be the one to say points. Just because I don't know.
Well, how many points is he going to get?
I think most models had him around like 40.
Yeah, around 40-ish.
Yeah, 40-ish? Okay.
I can see him being disciplined enough to take only one penalty every 4 games if he gets hurt for half of the season.
That's asking a lot.
Yeah, okay. More points, Dougie Hamilton or Mark Giordano?
Dougie.
I'm going to go with Dougie this time.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he's in a bigger role, as Mike said.
I don't really know if I have an opinion here, but since I have to pick one, I think I'll go with Dougie as well. Brandon Bollig, scratches or appearances?
Oh, scratches by far.
I mean, he's in the AHL right now, so...
shoot, I didn't even look that up.
Yeah, they waived him. He's not coming back for now.
Oh, good. So then scratches.
Definitely scratches then.
Yeah. Well, maybe appearances would be correct because then if he's in the AHL, he'll probably be playing. Okay, Brian Elliott or Corey Crawford's save percentage?
That's got to be Crawford too, right? I mean, unless he has like a really down year from putting the Hawks on his back. I mean, it's got to be Crawford to me. I mean, because he had like an amazing year last year. I'm not sure if he keeps it up if he has to keep making 35 saves a game every night. But I mean, I'll tentatively go Crawford.
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning Crow right now.
I feel like I lean more towards Elliott just because I think that the Hawks are going to be giving up a lot more shots than they would obviously hope. And I like as good as Crawford is, he's like no goalie is immune to the bad goal, and I think that he's going to have more bad goals than usual just because he's going to be facing more shots than usual. And then the last one, Blackhawks or Flames total points this season?
Like total points is in like
wins and
goals, assists across the board.
No, like just as a team, like standings points.
Standing wise,
yeah,
Blackhawks.
Yeah, Blackhawks.
Okay, I think
we're about like a year or two from the cliff drop, like complete cliff drop.
To me, it's like I think my prediction is Blackhawks just because I think that I predicted them to finish third in Central. But I can also again see where the Hawks become not as good of a team, and the Flames can kind of get hot. LOL at that, and then finish higher than the Blackhawks in the standings. I don't know if maybe.
No, I could see that, but I can't make that commitment after 3 games.
That's a very good point. Okay, and now, Mike, here's the big question we have for you. How have you become such an expert creator of good content.
Yeah, how have you become the good content boy of Twitter, hockey Twitter in general?
I'm incredibly depressed, and as we know, most comedians or people who write good jokes, they're typically a depressed person. I'm not trying to make a joke about that because I actually am, but I try to funnel all of the bad thoughts that I have in my personal life with a bunch of stuff that's going on, obviously, that you guys are probably well aware of. But yeah, I take all of that and I go sit on the toilet, and this is not a joke. I go to the bathroom and I just sit on the toilet with my laptop and I'll just write a bunch of material. Usually, or if I'm if I don't have my laptop, I'll just do it with my phone. I'll just write a bunch of jokes, and usually I spend like 3 or 4 hours a day, at various intervals, just like writing material, either for myself, just like ideas that pop into my head for dumb things I might do later, or video ideas or GIFs or whatever I'm doing that day. And then I just kind of roll with it whenever there's an opportunity. It's kind of hard. I watched a video on this kind of topic and this question before, with asking, I don't want to say I'm a genius, but it was like asking geniuses and people who are experts in like a certain field, how they just do things and how it happens. And it's hard to explain. Stuff just pops in my head. If it's instant, I'll put it out there. If it's something I've been working on, usually I'll be refining it for at least a couple of days. And then I just kind of, it's hard. It's whatever goes on in my head, it just comes out some days and it works. Usually if I'm photoshopping something that I'm unsure of, I have 4 or 5 people on, I'll text it to, or I'll DM on Twitter. I'm like, hey, does this work? Is it aligned properly? And most of the time it's instant pass. My harshest critic is our mutual friend Aaron, who does a lot of photoshopping stuff with me as well. And he's usually the ultimate filter. If he says no to something, then that means it's not good enough to go out, and I'll never put it out. But yeah, and if not, if it's really shitty, then I'll just give all those to people who want me to ghostwrite for them, which happens occasionally.
I think one of my favorite things on Twitter is your Drew Doughty garbage jokes in Photoshops. So thank you for those.
In general, whenever you take the Fox Sports player descriptions and just the things you came up with, I think the other night was, who was the goalie that eats a bucket of coleslaw for the Canes? Who was that? Zakov?
Yeah, Zakov.
It was Zakov. That's fantastic. Who just thinks of that? An artist.
I guess I used to write scripts and do improv and stuff in high school, and I used to write a webcomic, and I used to do all this crap before I stumbled into hockey Twitter. So I guess I kind of have a knack for it. Both my grandparents on my mom's side are super artistic, and my mom is a really talented painter and stuff like that. So I think I get it from her. The Fox Sports stuff, I just started doing it one day with Aaron. We were just getting really annoyed with how garbage sports broadcasts are, and I just kind of looked up what typeface they use, and it was $24, and I was like, okay, $24 to have fun with this for a little bit. I'm sure it'll last a week, but whatever, it'll give me some enjoyment. And then it's kind of spiraled into a situation where I don't know if you know Shang Pan, or I'm butchering his name right now, but he used to write for Jewels for the Crown, and now he writes for Today's Slapshot. I believe he DM'd me after the one Drew Doughty one I did last year that was really viral about him eating trash and he's never going to win a Norris Trophy. The guys from the LA Kings broadcast, their full production team had actually seen it, and they asked him, hey, do you know this guy? He's like, yeah, I know Mike. We've hung out before. And they're like, is that real? Did that actually go out on TV? And he's like, no. He photoshopped that. He did it in Photoshop. Just chill out. They're like, oh. They're like, well, we should probably figure out a new typeface. And he's like, yeah, you probably should do that because he's going to figure it out. So I guess people in organizations have seen it. Fox Sports Arizona blocked me after I made fun of a broadcast that they had done. And I think they've unblocked me now, which is nice. If for some reason somebody from Fox Sports Arizona is listening right now, thank you for unblocking me.
Dude, I need to get Montana Brennan to unblock me.
Montana Brennan is, I think he's just like horse ebooks. Like it's a giant. You're gonna get hit with a swerve, and it's gonna turn out it's like a marketing campaign for something.
I guarantee it's just someone behind the account, like having fun with everybody. Like if you look at all the likes, like his likes are like all porn bots and stuff. Like,
but I feel like
That's
at this point, like it's
a character.
It's gone on too long, and it's lost its luster. That whoever did that, like either it's a real person or whoever did it missed out on the chance to actually reveal themselves as the human, like as the person behind it, because it's not fun anymore. Like to make fun of him, it's like he's just become a parody of himself, really, and so.
I didn't know he was self-aware. Like when Hockey CT and Andrea Cieslik found him, I didn't think that Montana Brennan was actually aware of what was happening. I thought he just was getting feedback from like all of his tweets at like the hockey networks and team accounts and stuff like that. And then he like started following people. Like he followed me for a while and like started favoriting tweets and stuff like that. I was like, okay. So he's actually sentient, like he's kind of aware of what's going on to some degree now.
Yeah, he started like I would like make fun of him, and he would start responding to me, and then I started to figure out that he was like self-aware and knew that he was like being mocked, and that was kind of when I stopped thinking it was a joke anymore, and I was like, okay, this is actually a real person, and then I almost felt bad that I was like making fun of him so much, because then it was like it's funny if they don't respond to you, but it becomes less funny when they start becoming like a person that you're interacting with, I think.
Yeah, I don't like making fun of. I don't go out of my way to make fun of people anymore. I think that that's one thing I'm kind of appreciative of, especially like, and not to like pump my tires here, but like when I hit like 3,000 followers earlier this year, I kind of like my roommate of all people. He sat me down. And he's like, you can't just go picking fights with people anymore. Like you have to kind of carry yourself a little bit better online. And I was like, you're right. So I quit picking fights with random people. I'll still get in arguments with like people in the media though, but it's just much more enjoyable to just kind of be like create some meta humor about like the hockey, like this weird hockey community that we're all part of. And that's kind of like I guess like the main driving force behind a lot of stuff I make now. It's just like, I just want to make people happy. That's at the end of the day, like if I can just make like 3 or 4 people laugh, then I'll probably sleep better at night.
You're a man's man.
Well, Mike, thanks for coming on with us. We appreciate your Flames and Blackhawks insight, even though the Blackhawks part was a little depressing. But
I'm just going to ignore the
we're
facts
going to be
about.
realistic about it.
I'm just going to ignore the facts we talked about and say my team is going to win the cup and sweep the playoffs. I'm just going to, like Mike said, confirmation bias.
Whatever helps you sleep at night, that's fine.
It does help me sleep at night. It does help me sleep at night. Anyway, thanks, Mike, for joining us. That's Mike Fail. He writes for Flames Nation. He's the hockey Twitter's great content boy. Give him a follow his work, and all of that good fun stuff. Thanks, Mike, for coming on.
Oh, I'm here, sir. I put myself on mute for a second. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, hopefully we'll have you on again, too.
Yeah,
all right.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
All right, and then this has been the Second City Hockey Closing Thoughts.
I have no closing thoughts. My only closing thoughts My only closing thought is follow us on Twitter.
Follow us on Twitter. Follow us on Twitter at SCH at Ice Cold Podcast, at _ Adam Hess, at Robert Zaglinski, and follow all of our work at Second City Hockey as we just described. Have a great night, everyone, or whenever you listen to this, rather. For Adam Hess, Robert Zaglinski signing off. Stay classy.
Hey. Hey.